Hello, welcome everyone. We are excited to get started and provide our update on the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. My name is Sabrina Paganoni. I am an investigator at the HEALEY and AMG Center for ALS at Mass General, and I'm excited to be here with the principal investigator of the trial, Dr. Mary Cudkowicz, also at the HEALEY and AMG Center, and Dr. Kuldip Dave from the ALS Association. Next slide. This is the agenda for today. We want to provide updates on the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial, sharing our progress with enrollment and study treatments and available sites. We also want to share information about how to stay in touch and find a site near you. Also, we're going to give you a few ideas about what we're planning, what's next, our thoughts about upcoming expanded access programs. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the website, so feel free to share the recording with other people who might be interested. Next. As you know, we've been working with the entire ALS community to launch the trial. This trial is the first platform trial for ALS in the world. And we're really excited and grateful for all the support and wonderful contributions from the scientific community, many ALS experts, scientists, investigators, physicians, experts in the field. Great support from industry. We have fantastic industry partners. Great support from the patient community, patients, caregivers, foundations, different groups that support ALS research. As well as the FDA, that's really been a phenomenal partner in this. So we were able to launch the trial recently, and this is because of the fantastic support from so many in the community. Next slide. The trial is being sponsored by the HEALEY and AMG Center for ALS at Mass General, in collaboration with many in the community, including many foundations, industry partners, and many other academic groups, such as the NEALS Consortium that specialize in ALS. And today, you can see the logos on the slide, and we really could have not done it without the fantastic support from everyone here. And today, I'm particularly excited to have Dr. Kuldip Dave from the ALS Association, one of our funders and contributors, to speak about what this means for the ALS Association. And over time, we will continue to invite people who are supporting the trial and different foundations. So future webinars will include other groups as well. Kuldip?
Thank you, Sabrina. ALS Association, we're the largest philanthropic funder of ALS research, and our mission is to advocate for, provide care, and to find cures and treatments for people with ALS. This initiative, the platform trial, and the concept of a trial with multiple treatments being tested and evaluated simultaneously is just so innovative. This trial format has already been successful in the cancer field, and Sabrina, for you and Merit to drive and lead this effort for ALS is not only just innovative, but frankly groundbreaking. And we're very happy to have supported this trial. We've invested $3 million, $1 million per year over 3 years in this first ever platform trial for ALS. I think this concept of having shared infrastructure and common data and sample collection processes, central governance, to sort of build into the platform trial so that you can increase operational efficiency and frankly have time and cost savings. These are all really important factors to us, and we are very happy to help the ALS platform trial by making our community aware of the trial. We point them to the NEALS recruitment tool. For example, if you're interested in being part of the trial and participating in the trial, please contact Carly Allen at neals.org, and she'll be your ALS trial liaison, and she can answer questions and help you navigate the clinical trial database. and hopefully enroll in the study. We help this trial by supporting infrastructure grants. For example, we fund training of clinicians, site administrators. Again, this is all helpful because these are the folks that will be eventually running these trials. We support databases such as Neurobank, where data and specimens from the platform trial will end up. And so again, all of these things to say that we're really excited. We think this is novel, innovative, groundbreaking, and are happy to support the team in driving this to success. Sabrina, back to you.
Thank you, Kuldip. That's wonderful. We love working with the ALS Association, and we really appreciate your support and the support from the other groups as well. It really takes a village to do a trial of this scale. This is a perpetual trial, so we really spent some time designing it and optimizing the infrastructure with the goal of starting testing a few treatments, several treatments, and we want to continue to add and continue to keep the trial open until really we find the best cures for everyone with ALS. And as you know, the trial also has scientific goals of fostering collaboration and promoting new discovery thanks to biomarkers and other samples that are being collected. So really, this is something that could really be transformative for the entire ALS community, in addition to testing the first few drugs and many more new drugs that we will continue to add. Now, thanks to this amazing collaboration, we were excited to start the trial in 2020. We really wanted to start in March and April, but unfortunately, as you know, the pandemic really caused us to slightly delay the start of the trial. Next slide. I just wanted to share that, as you know, in the spring of this year, most centers experienced major disruptions to their normal workflow with real limited availability to start new studies or enroll participants. Everything happens from redeployment to restriction on staff access, restrictions on certain procedures. For example, respiratory testing, this is something important for ALS, has been prohibited at many sites. Now, this is what happened in the spring and continues to happen to some extent. But the good news is that we were able to overcome this thanks to the great collaboration among everyone involved. Next slide. So through the pandemic, we remained committed to the trial, and we were able to start the trial. We started enrollment in July 2020. When we were on lockdown, lots of activities happened remotely, so we continued to work, although we couldn't enroll participants in the spring. But we also did something that I think is very important and very forward-thinking, which is what we did was to amend the protocol to make the trial COVID-proof. And what I mean by that is that because there are uncertainties about perhaps second waves of the pandemic, hopefully not, but we did modify the trial to make it adapted to the new reality so that we can continue to run the trial in a way that's safe and effective and sustainable, regardless of what happens with the pandemic. So should there be a second wave, again, we have sort of some flexibility built in now with new tools, telemedicine and other adaptations that can help sustain the trial in this new environment. So again, the good news is that enrollment started in July 2020. So when we started, obviously the big question is, how is the pandemic going to affect the rate of enrollment? Well, what I can tell you today is that this is perhaps the trial that has been enrolling the fastest in recent history, or certainly one of the best from that point of view. Next slide. We already enrolled 96 individuals with ALS who signed informed consent. 48 of those are currently receiving study drug, active drug or placebo. As you may remember from previous presentations, because this is a platform trial, it's a two-step process for getting to the drug because you first enroll in the platform trial as a whole, and then participants are assigned to different drugs. That's why not everyone who has signed consent is on drug yet, and we also need to check for obviously eligibility, make sure that safety labs and EKGs, etc., are all fine. But essentially, the good news is that there is great interest from the community. We have several sites that are enrolling, many sites enrolled, several individuals, and again, people are on study drug as of right now. I also want to mention that the patient community has been providing phenomenal feedback and gave us phenomenal suggestions. So I want to explain a few of them today as we continue the presentation. So the first suggestion was actually to share enrollment updates on a regular basis with the community. This suggestion came from the Patient Advisory Committee and a few people from Miami ALS. They asked us if we could update the community. And so we decided that that's a great idea. First, we had to clear it with our ethics committee and the statisticians to make sure this would have no impact on the kind of the safety and privacy, etc., and the scientific integrity of the trial. And we received assurance that that's okay to do. And so we are going to continue to update the community by way of posting regular updates on our website and in our webinars. I'll tell you more about additional webinar opportunities and opportunities to ask questions and interact with us in a few slides. But again, we are committed to transparently sharing all the enrollment updates for this trial. If you have questions about enrollment or about anything else related to the trial, please contact the patient navigator. This is also a new role that we just developed. We are sort of rolling it out as of right now. We hired a fantastic patient navigator, Ms. Catherine Small, who is a new coordinator that will be working to support the ALS community and the trial sites through enrollment and with any questions that people might have. That's the phone number on the slide. The email address is there. Please contact us if you have any questions. Obviously, this is a large-scale trial with a lot of moving pieces, and so we really wanted to also offer sort of a central point of contact that people can contact with any questions so that they can always have reliable information. Next slide. So just to summarize again, as you know, the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial offers several benefits over traditional trials. That's why there's so much support from the entire community and multiple stakeholders. It's a trial that's been designed to cut down costs and time to finding effective treatments in a substantial way. Our statistical models suggests that we're gonna cut down the time to test treatments by over 50%. And we're gonna obviously follow metrics and then report on them, in the future once, we continue to make progress. But essentially for now, we launched the trial with this shared infrastructure with 3 treatments called regimens on the slide. We will continue to add more regimens. A great feature of the trial and the shared infrastructure is that we can share placebo data. What that means from a participant perspective, so from the point of view of a person with ALS, is that the chances of being on active are greatly increased by 3 times compared to a traditional trial. And that's why we think it's really, so that the design is really a win-win situation that allows us to answer more questions, more scientific questions, give more contributions, and most importantly, it's patient-centered with less placebo for everyone involved. Next slide. So this is how we started. It's, again, as I said, a perpetual trial. We're going to adapt, meaning we're going to include more treatments as they are developed and as we bring them in. Each regimen will enroll 160 participants. And so it's a large-scale operation. Obviously, just with the first 3 regimens, we're talking of 480 people. For each regimen, again, it's 160 participants. Because of the efficiencies and the shared placebo that we can do in the context of a platform trial, the majority of participants will be on active, not on placebo. So for each regimen, 120 participants will be on active and only 40 on placebo. The drugs that are being tested as of right now are these 3: Zellucoplan, that's made by UCB-Ra, Vertiperstat from Biohaven, and CNM-Au8 from Clean. I want to mention that each of these drugs has a different mechanism of action. Really, we don't know, what the best target is for ALS. We know there's promising data for each of these targets and each of these drugs. The drugs were selected by an expert committee of ALS scientists and investigators based on a competitive process. As you may remember from previous webinars, we issued a request for proposals. We had almost 30 applications, meaning companies that wanted to submit their drug for inclusion into the trial. The first to enter the trial, again, these first 3 were selected by this expert committee, but we will continue to add more. Each drug also includes an open label extension. So what this means is that the way we're going to test each one of these drugs is as follows. Participants will be randomized active to placebo in a 3-to-1 ratio, as I said earlier, and will be treated with the drug for 24 weeks or about 6 months. Now, at the end of participation, everyone who completes that regimen will be eligible to enter an open label extension. And what that means is that for the next several months, at least 1 year for each of these 3 regimens, they have the option, if they want to receive active drug. And that's very important for several reasons. Number one, it gives participants access to the drug, regardless of whether they received active or placebo before, during the previous 6 months. And the second important aspect of this is that it will give us more data on safety, as well as will allow us to collect more efficacy data and biomarker data for that particular intervention. So that's very important, both from a patient access perspective and also from a drug development perspective. If a participant decides to decline or forgo the open label extension, they can also consider re-entering the trial and be reassigned to any of the drugs that are available, when they re-enter the trial. They still need to be eligible for that. So that there will be a discussion that each participant will have to have with their own physician and investigator at the time that they complete the placebo-controlled trial. Next slide. So again, we want to keep adding great therapies. We continue to accept submissions or nominations for new compounds on a rolling basis. We opened with 3 regimens, as I said. We are working towards adding the 4th regimen, predopivine, made by Prelenia, also another mechanism of action, and this will be added shortly. And we are also in discussions with other companies for 2021. We haven't made all the final steps or decisions for those, but again, the goal here is to keep adding great treatments. And that's the link for people to companies to submit nominations or investigators to submit nominations. Next slide. So for everyone on the line, I want to explain how to find enrolling centers near you. So the goal, as you may remember from previous webinars, we've given a few now, and they are all recorded on our website. So the goal has always been to start with 54 sites. We selected 54 sites of the NILS Consortium, all in the United States. That we cover a large portion of the country. 22 are actively enrolling. So what that means is that there are 22 sites that are enrolling participants, people with ALS, to participate in the trial. And we are working as quickly as possible with the other sites to be able to add them. So essentially we are working on adding all 54 as soon as possible. We are making a lot of progress on that. We also realize that there are some areas of the country that might not have as many sites available. And also we realize that there's a lot of interest from the patient community. And so obviously the more sites, the better. And so what we're gonna do is, as soon as we activate the first 54 over the next few weeks, we're gonna look into adding more sites so that either certain geographies can be added, or just we can have more sites in places where obviously there's a lot of interest and we just need more people to be able to enroll all people who are interested. So again, the impact of the pandemic has been variable regionally, geographically. That has impacted some of this staggering of the sites, but we're making progress on all of them. And again, our goal is to activate the first 54 very soon and then add more. If you want to find contact information on the sites and also actual contact information for the research coordinator, phone number, email, you can look them up on our website, and I have the website there. There is a map, and below there's contact information and also a link to click so that it's easy to get to the right person. Next slide. You can also sign up to receive platform trial updates. I'm listing here the ALS Link newsletter. We provide updates for both this trial and other research opportunities, and that's the website there to and the sort of the icon to click on to sign up. That's one of the ways to learn information, to learn about the trial. Obviously, our collaborators also have a lot of great websites and other information. I'm sure the ALS Association also has lots of great research information on their website. So there's different ways to find information. I'm just sharing a few tools here. Clinicaltrials.gov and also the News Consortium website is another great website to find information. Next slide. So for more updates, now I want to share one idea that also came from our patient advisory committee. So they suggested that in addition to the monthly webinars that are recorded and sort of longer posted on our website, they suggested to do weekly informal Q&A sessions so that we can be available as investigators to ask questions directly from anyone in the ALS patient community who might have any questions about the trial. So we're going to start next week. We're going to post the schedule and registration links on our website, and the weekly shorter Q&A sessions are going to be more informal. So rather than kind of having us present, we really want to hear from you. We want to know what your concerns are, what questions you have, so that we can also provide a really centralized way of for everyone to be connected to the trial and learn more about it. So thank you to the patients who suggested that. Next slide. Last but not least, I want to mention that we are planning to expand our expanded access options. So the idea also came from the patient advisory committee. They explained to us, the importance of EAPs. We had actually started EAPs at our site at the Healy Center in 2018. Those are small programs, and now we want to continue to expand and build an EAP program in parallel to the platform trial. The goal of the EAP program is to allow access to drugs to patients that are not eligible for the trial. So if somebody is eligible for the trial, that would be the best mechanism to get access to the drugs. But if somebody is not eligible, the EAP program would be a great option. Now, that's not available on a large scale yet. We're working to achieve this goal. We are doing several things. We submitted one grant. We're actively fundraising. There's some information on our website, as you can see there on the link. So again, it's going to take a little bit of time to really set this up and expand the options, but certainly that's something that we want to do, and we understand, we hear the community, we understand why that's important, and that's something that we also made our goal because of your input and feedback. Next slide. Okay, so I think that was the end of the presentation. We really wanted to keep it sort of compact and short so that we can have a lot of time for questions. And on this platform, this Zoom platform, the best way to submit questions is to type them in the Q&A box. And again, the event is being recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. We had a couple questions that came in earlier before the webinar, so I wanted to start with those, and then we'll go with the ones that are coming in the Q&A box. And so let me pull those up here. So the first question is, and maybe Sabrina, you'll answer this one. If the first 3 drugs currently being tested had positive results, when would they be available to patients worldwide?
Now, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, one of the main goals of the trial is to accelerate the path to effective treatment. So, we certainly hope that that will be done, as rapidly as possible. Now, the way the process works is that, if depending on the results will be submitted to the regulatory authorities in each territory. So, starting from the FDA in the US, and so based on their review, the drug could be approved based on just this one trial, because as we discussed with them, the trial design is very robust. So if the results are very robust, this could suffice as the one trial to grant approval. Obviously, that's a matter of review by the FDA, and then based on the review, depending on the outcome of that, the drug will become available and marketed and will become standard of care. You also asked about worldwide. Obviously, that will depend on regulatory authorities in different territories, because each of them, you know, the European Medicines Agency or Health Canada will have their own review process.
Related to that question is really a question about whether we're looking at partnering with any institutions in Europe. This question was about Europe, but we could talk about other countries in the future to offer access to the platform trial there.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So you know, as you know, the ALS scientific community is very collaborative, and we work a lot with our colleagues from overseas or Canada or other territories. And actually in the pandemic, if anything, we've been working more with many of them, because it's, you know, even if you're not traveling, it's so easy now to connect on Zoom or other platforms. So we certainly have been continuing this conversation with many international colleagues. When we started the platform trial, the advice we got from other platform trials, from oncology and other trials in the neuroscience space, was to start with sort of one territory, the US in this case, because, you know, the level of complexity and cost and, you know, the really effort needed to maintain a global infrastructure is much more substantial. So that's why we decided to start with one area. And so the trial is currently available in the US. We're certainly having conversations about possible expansion into other territories, Canada. That would be a logical next step, but again, that's still ongoing in terms of discussions.
Thank you. I'll say that when we started the platform trial, we met with people who had done this in oncology. We thought that was really important to learn what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And the best advice we got was to really start simple, because if you started really complex, you're never going to get off the ground. And so simple is not really simple, but for us, simple was one country, one regulatory group. And we really wanted to get it off the ground here. But obviously, if this continues to succeed, you know, we would be open to going into other countries. It adds a lot of complexity and a lot of cost, but it's something we're starting to think about, especially, you know, as you mentioned, starting with Canada and then maybe Europe. But in this first year, we really just want to get this off the ground, enroll well, show that we can do it, keep attracting other companies and attracting interest, and prove what we really believe is that this is the best way to test treatments when you have such a big pipeline like in ALS. So for a minute, I'm just going to shift to another topic, because there's a couple questions about AMX035. And since we have two, actually, I guess 3 people very involved in that on the phone, I wanted to maybe ask Sabrina first and then Kuldip to talk about that. And so one question is really just, can you please talk about AMX0035, and then also to give a sense of timelines around that and what the association and others are doing. So I don't know,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then obviously both of you can weigh in. So first of all, we're very excited about the AMX35 trial. We gave a webinar, you know, a few days ago about it. It's also available on our website, and we will continue to update the community as new results are available. At this time, you know, we're still in active discussions in terms of next steps. Should the drug become available, you know, and should that become standard of care, you will be allowed in the platform trial, because in the platform trial, we are allowing all standard of care medications, including riluzole and edaravone. At this time, AMX35 is still an investigational product. And again, there's a lot of work that's now, you know, we're really working a lot on next steps, hoping to accelerate next steps as much as possible.
Kuldip?
Yeah, sorry, I was unmuting myself. You know, from our perspective at the ALS Association, this is one of the most exciting results that have come out in a long time. AMX35 and the CENTAUR trial was a robust and well-designed trial. It was a double-blind, placebo-controlled, multi-center, 25 sites across the United States, and a relatively large trial in ALS. So it's really well designed. The efficacy data are really exciting. The data showed that AMX35 demonstrated a significant slowing of ALS disease progression. And I think that Sabrina has talked about the specific results, but an estimated 2.32 point difference over 6 months, or if you looked at it in a different way, change from baseline 2.9 point difference. And you know, what's exciting about this study and different, I think, is that this wasn't a study that was not significant right off the bat from a primary analysis, and then you had to look at post hoc results and do some analysis. Not that there's anything wrong in that. This is a heterogeneous disease, and sometimes you have to look at data post hoc to see if your drug works in certain populations or not. In the case of AMX35, it hit its primary endpoint in a predetermined analysis that in the ALSFRS score, there was a clear and significant difference. Another point that makes this really exciting is that this effect was on top of the standard of care. Approximately 75 to 80% of patients in both groups were either all Willisol or Radicava or both. And again, that means that this effect that we're seeing with AMX35 was on top of that standard of care. And I think the secondary endpoints, and although things like muscle control and breathing, hospitalizations, they were not significant, they were all in the same direction. I think the third point here is that AMX35 demonstrated a good safety profile. It was generally well tolerated. There were some adverse events that were gastrointestinal related, but they were transient and short-lived. And so we believe at the ALS Association that this has a very positive benefit-risk ratio. We think that patients should have access to this drug as soon as possible. We agree that larger and longer trials are needed, but we are asking the FDA to approve this drug now with the condition that a post-market study can be done, which would suffice the longer and larger trial that we would all like to see. I think the good benefit-risk ratio is really our rationale for pushing this to patients as soon as possible. We can't wait. The ALS community can't wait, and this is again one of the most exciting data that we've seen in a while.
Thank you. Thanks. One other question that came in before, and maybe I'll take this one, which is whether the 7 drugs we're considering have the same or different mechanism of action. What does that tell us about the biology of the illness? And so they all have different targets. There's a few of them that target neuroinflammation, but different parts of that. But I think the most hopeful and exciting part is that they were picked based on their scientific data. So, and that's very different than how trials were done before, where it's really if a company has a drug and they want to test it in ALS, they design it and they test it and they control all the data. And yes, a site investigator can decide whether they will be a site or present it to their patients, but basically all the decisions were made by the individual companies and a bit based on whether they have the resources. For the platform trial, we made it a competition. We still have people apply, and we have a therapy evaluation committee with leaders in the science of ALS and drug development, and they weigh in and they look at, is it a valid target? Have they really done a rigorous preclinical work, and do they know the dose that's ready to go to people? And so it gives them more confidence that we're picking good drugs. And the truth will be at the end results, how we see how this goes when we know the final results. The biology is heterogeneous and multi-layer, and so I do think in general it's not going to be one drug likely. And so in the way we are in this trial, testing combinations because everybody is allowed to be on riluzole and radicava and eventually anything that becomes standard of care in addition to the new drug. So I'll go through some of the questions we got online. Some of them are quick and some of them are a little more complex. So maybe Sabrina, you can take this one. Is there any travel reimbursement for going to screening or once you're accepted into the trial for the visits?
So there is a participant reimbursement for the visits. Now, I should say that's kind of standard and within the standard acceptable sort of amount. It's now something that perhaps for some people might be enough to reimburse kind of a long distance trip. But again, that's sort of a standard practice for clinical trials. So there is some reimbursement for things like parking, meals, or some reasonable expenses to cover the cost of the visit.
Depending where you live, and hopefully this will not for a long time depend where you live, there are also the ALS Association. There are other foundations that can help with transportation costs and transportation to trials. So it is key to kind of dock into the foundations in your city and state, the ALS Association, MDA, Compassion Care ALS. They can also help. All right, Sabrina, how long will it take to analyze and present results once a 6-month arm is complete?
That's a great question. So so it generally takes a few weeks to a few months. Now we're going to be in a situation here where we're going to have results for many drugs at the same time, which is exciting. So exactly, I don't know, if it might take a few weeks to get through all the data, but generally that's the time frame.
Yeah, I'll add that we're very excited because enrollment is going so well that again, assuming it stays the same, that we might actually be done with the first enrollment for the first 3 in early 2021, which means that next summer we might have the results. And again, we'd have the results of 3 drugs, not 1. And I wanted to use this time to maybe talk a little bit about, again, another efficiency of the platform trial. So Sabrina mentioned that 22 of the 54 sites are up, but we do expect all 54 or 53 maybe will be ready by the end of October. Then every time we add another drug, they're all ready. So this kind of staggered of sites is only at the beginning. But after that, like when we add the 4th one, Polenia, literally the day we have IRB approval, for Polenia, we can get within a couple days, all 54 sites are ready. So there's tremendous efficiency in startup in this platform trial. So there's a question about IC14, and so the question is whether IC14 immunotherapy is still being investigated in the platform trial. Sabrina, maybe you want to answer first, so I can add to that.
Absolutely. Yes, so IC14 was one of the first 5 treatments that were selected to enter the platform sort of in the early stages. So we started with 3. And so those are the ones that I just mentioned. Prelenia is number 4, and IC14 is also being considered. I should say that the numbering doesn't reflect any order of excitement about the drug in any way. It's just sort of logistical kind of reasons that made it so that we started with those 3, and now we're going to number 4 and number 5. So again, they were all 5 were equally exciting from a scientific perspective, but just logistically, we had to stagger them a little bit.
Yeah, what I want to do is expand a little bit that that we have done a very small expanded access program with IC14 with the goal of working on gathering some information that will be really important for how we design their arm of the regimen. And there's just another point that expanded access programs can be very helpful for a lot of reasons. One is to provide access to people who might not be eligible for a trial, but also that you can learn more about the illness in that population. And so we're obviously going to try to publish it and get the word out, because I think there's some misperceptions out there about what one can learn from an EAP. And we want to show that you can actually learn a lot. You can do a lot of good in many ways for care and for research. So there's a question, but is it possible to end up on all 3 regimens simultaneously?
Yes. No, yes, not at this time. So the trial is meant to test each drug individually in one participant, in each participant, although again, the testing study-wide is ongoing in parallel. That's why we're gonna test them faster. But for each participant, they can only get one drug at a time. At the end of participation in the 6 month trial, the placebo-controlled portion, as I said earlier, a participant could choose to re-enter the platform and test the second drug, provided that they're still eligible for the trial. I should mention that the concept of the platform trials can also be used, has been used in cancer to test combinations of treatments. So I think, ultimately in the future, that's a framework that could really enable combinations of treatments. And in a way, we are already doing it because we are allowing standard of care to be taken by the participants. So riluzole and edaravone are being allowed if the participant wants to take them. So in the future, we, this framework could enable, more combinations. But for now, in terms of the investigational products, we are testing them one at a time in each individual participant.
So there's a question that's very specific to MGH, but I think it brings up a broader question about the sites. So I wanted to share it, which was when would someone who's called a site be expected to hear back from the site? And so gold standard should be like 24, 48 hours, I would say. There is no gold standard for this, but if we're going to make one up on the spot, that would be my recommendation. Now, having said that, we are in a new situation in ALS, and I think it's a good situation, but it's one that we have to figure out how to support sites for. This trial has so much interest that we are hearing from our sites that they cannot get back to people on time, as time as they would want. And in the past trials, it was kind of the opposite, where, enrollment was so slow that, it was taking a long time to finish enrolling for the study. We're in a new era, and I'm very excited about that, and I'm thankful to the patient community for that. But we need to find a way to support our sites so that they can get back to people in that 24, 48 hours. So that's part of what the patient navigator's role is going to be, but we're also talking to Kuldip and others at ALS Association, the MDA, of what they might be able to do to support sites. Everybody wants to get back to people quickly, but I think people are a little inundated, not just with trials, but also that they're all opening up their clinics again. It sounds like an excuse, and it isn't a good excuse, but we've heard from patients that we need our sites to be answering better, and we're trying to find ways to support them and help make that very feasible. New problem, we have to solve it, but it is a sign of something positive, and that you all are out there advocating to be part of research, and we need to be moving at your speed as well. So hopefully that will get better. If not, that's exactly what these drop-in sessions are going to be about, so we can hear from people and we can troubleshoot together. So at what point would a trial participant know that they were on drug or placebo? Sabrina?
Yes, so this trial technically doesn't end at the end of the placebo-controlled trial, because we do have an open label extension. Now that's optional. So as I said earlier, somebody who completes the placebo-controlled trial can decide to enter the open label extension and receive drug for about 1 year or so, or they can decline that option. So because of that, it's important for us to maintain the blind, because now, based on sort of new scientific developments, statistical methods, as well as FDA guidance on ALS trials, we know that one can gather a lot of very important information from the open label extension. So not just giving access to the participants, but also really get more robust safety and efficacy and long-term survival data, or other efficacy data. And so in order to be able to collect the outcomes, muscle strength and ALS FRSR, et cetera, in a non-biased way, it's important to maintain the blind during the open label extension as well. So essentially, to answer your question, participants will be given, will be provided their assignment to active or placebo. They will know at the end of the open label extension. So it's going to take a little longer, but for good reasons, because the open label extension can provide very valuable information. Now, obviously, we think that, you know, at some point, obviously we will learn the results. Somebody earlier, you know, was asking about when we will know the results from the placebo-controlled trial. So at that point, once the results are known, if the drug was not effective, then sort of moot point to continue the open label extension, and we can unblind more rapidly. If in fact the drug worked, then we would want again to complete the open label extension, gather all the data, and unblind participants, and that would be obviously a good problem to have at that point, that we have a new drug and we want to complete and prolong perhaps the open label extension.
Another question is, what was the criteria and selection of patients to participate in the trial?
Yes, so this, we put a lot of thought into this in collaboration with several statisticians, experts, as well as the patient advisory committee. And we presented them in previous webinars. They are on our website, and all the criteria are also available on clinicaltrials.gov if, you know, if you want to look them up in more detail. So the criteria basically were selected based on statistical modeling, and to make sure that the trial was at statistical power to be able to detect a treatment effect. And a lot of factors go into that in terms of combination of participant characteristics that allow the statisticians to draw conclusions about whether the drug is effective or not. So the goal of the trial is basically to maximize that power while also balancing that with patient access, so that we can answer the questions as quickly as possible. And then in the end, the answers will benefit the entire population, obviously. So that's kind of my first answer. I don't know if you want to add anything, Merit.
No, I agree. And I think the nice thing about these platform trial designs is you can adapt along the way. As we learn more from these initial trials, we can adapt. And again, we really hope to build this parallel expanded access program so that if someone isn't eligible for this trial, that there are other options for them. I really that we need to have options for all good options for all people with ALS. So this is an important question, and one that we are really working hard on. And I might ask both Sabrina and Kuldip to reply to this one, which is, since we know already what ALS does to patients, can we push to eradicate placebo? I know, Sabrina, you want to start first?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Our goal has always been to minimize placebo and eventually even remove the placebo component. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the quick presentation, this trial has a much lower percentage of people on placebo because we can share data across different groups. So we can still maintain a small group and accumulate sort of a placebo bank that can be used also for future trials. So as you imagine, this platform trial that just started, it's a perpetual trial. So as we continue to expand and we sort of continue to hold on to the data from the previous participants on placebo, we will continue to expand our placebo bank from previous participants. And over time, what we want to do is to change the ratio active to placebo towards a ratio that's even more favorable. So right now it's 3-to-1. In the future, again, as we have more placebo data and more people that we can compare to, maybe the ratio will be 4-to-1 or 5-to-1, until ultimately the goal will be to really limit the use of placebos. Now, we still need some people on placebo at this stage. That's driven by the state of the science and the variability of the disease. The disease is very variable, as you know. No two patients are the same, and everyone has a different course. And that's why we need to keep that placebo group to be able to draw scientific conclusions, because in the end, we want to be able to have results that can be actionable, and then if the drug works, that the drug can be brought to market. So that's why we need a small group of people on placebo to make scientific discussion comparisons. Also, we have a 6-month trial, so really we're not following people long term. We're trying to get to the answers as quickly as possible, and because of that, we need to be able to have a comparison group. Now, if this trial was, much longer or much larger, then maybe we wouldn't, but that would defeat the purpose. It would still take a long time to get to any answers. So it's still necessary at this stage.
Kuldip, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, this is complicated, and thanks, Sabrina, for going first. You know, it's a variable disease. It's a heterogeneous disease. You've heard this word now, you know, several times today. And you know, when you have met one person with ALS, you've met that one person with ALS. It's different in every patient, and you know that makes it very difficult to generalize placebo or use historical data. You know, on top of that, there's also the fact that there aren't a lot of treatments available. And so, you know, we, from a human standpoint, always want to hope that things work. And a lot of times in neuroscience field, you get a huge placebo effect because people want to feel better. And this is why it makes it so difficult to have no placebo group at all. But I think innovative approaches like the platform trial are helping with that in reducing the number that we use of placebo, as Sabrina mentioned. You know, the other thing that we are doing at the ALS Association is funding databases like the PROACT database or the Neurobank database. And again, what, you know, PROACT is doing is it's taking all of the data from the clinical trials that have already happened in the past. And it's all put in one database. And so you start to create a picture of what a placebo should look like. And as Sabrina said, as we learn more and more about these trials and more of these trials go into those databases, we'll be better able to model what a placebo group would look like. And that would help reduce placebo, the number of placebo participants we have in trials.
Thank you. So we have about 8 minutes. We're gonna go, and we have 5 questions at the moment, but please get ready, and then we'll go faster on these, but they're really important. So I can answer the next one, which is, will I be able to get expanded access before December 2020? And I don't know yet. I hope so. We have commitments from 2 companies so far for expanded access, and we are waiting for the results of a grant review to support one of them. And I think if that comes through, we can go super fast. So we're working on it, working on the protocol and all the parts of it. But I hope in these future weekly calls we'll be able to give more definitive timelines on that. But we're committed to it. Another question is, my site, Columbia, said that they were reviewed last week. How long would it take for them to be ready for enrollment? Ms. Brita.
Yes, so the site activation, which means getting them ready to actually enroll participants, is a multi-step process for good reasons, actually, because it's important to make sure that everyone who's on the staff and the team at that site has all the certifications, all the trainings, etc. So it does take a while. Now, the good news is that once somebody is reviewed, as you said, that's what perhaps you're referring to the central IRB review. That means that the site has been added to the IRB or ethics committee review. So that's an important step. Now, the other ones really depend on just some kind of logistical paperwork and administrative things. The good news is that once those are in, activation can come very soon. And as Merit was mentioning, this site activation was only needed at the very beginning of this trial. That's a great efficiency of this type of trial design compared to standalone trials. Keep in mind that for each standalone trial or individual trial, this site activation process has to be repeated every time you test a drug or you work with a different company. We are doing all of this right now, and once the sites are activated, they'll be active and ready right away for the new drugs.
Thank you. Okay, so if you're selected for the initial trial, once the 6-month period is up, can you choose which medication to be on in the open label portion?
No, so the participant will have the option of entering the open label extension for that drug or that regimen that they were assigned to. And there is a reason for that, because the open label extension is needed to answer very important scientific questions of long-term safety as well as long-term efficacy. So we need sort of to look at the long-term effects of the drug in those people who started taking the drug at the very beginning. If we allowed people to switch, basically we would lose that signal and the trial could not be used for that purposes. So the open label extension really is very important and could actually contribute to sort of decisions by regulatory authorities in terms of next steps for that particular drug. So it's very important. It's also one trial. So essentially you continue in the trial, you know, kind of seamlessly from the placebo-controlled portion to the open label extension.
Thank you. And there's a question of, can enrollees take curcumin and other over-the-counter supplements?
So we have a very detailed list of different drugs as well as supplements and whether they're allowed or not. So what we are doing is that any drug or agent or supplement that's currently being tested in an active ALS trial is not allowed in this particular trial. The reason being that, you know, whether they are available online or not, you know, they're being tested for good reasons in a separate trial, and therefore could confound the results or the testing of the investigational products that we're testing in this trial. So curcumin specifically, since you asked about that, is being tested in a separate trial as of right now. So unfortunately, we cannot allow it in this particular trial. But other supplements that are, you know, are taken for sort of general, you know, wellness or general health and are not currently being tested for ALS, those will be allowed. And again, we have a very detailed list so that for every site, every participant, the decision is going to be the same.
This makes me wonder whether it might be helpful for us to post something like that, so that would be helpful for people. Again, we put a lot of thought into it, but it's really the criteria Sabrina mentioned. If it's in another trial, it's considered experimental, and it makes it very hard to tell if our drugs work or not. There's a question about Amylyx, so maybe I'll go back to Kuldip about this, and Sabrina. Would FDA approval of AMX 0035 result in it being covered by insurance or limited access?
Yeah, it's hard to answer that question. The FDA will approve the product, but yeah, the setting of pricing happens at the level of insurance companies and payers like Medicare, Medicaid, and so on. So it is difficult at this stage to know, you know, what that would be and what would be covered and what would not be covered. Sabrina, I know in the past that the type of study and the type of robustness of the results are things like that are taken in the criteria for what's covered in insurance or not. But maybe you have a better answer than what I provided.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I cannot answer specifically because obviously it's going to be a matter of review by the FDA and the payers, such as Medicare, etc. So, you know, it's hard to predict. I would say that, you know, we did this research with the hypothesis that the drug will be helpful for everyone. And therefore, if approved, you know, we don't have any reasons to believe that only some people will respond and others would not, based on the data that we have available at this time. But again, the final decisions is, you know, those are not up to us. It's going to be a matter of review. Certainly, it would be great if the drug was approved for everyone.
So in our very last minute, I'll answer the question. What happens if you're in the platform trial and Neurone is approved by the FDA? Can you stay in the trial or open label and try Neurone? And I'll just say that, first of all, I hope we're in a situation where we have Amylyx approved, Neurone positive and approved. And really for the platform trial and any trial, once the drug is on the market and FDA approved, we're going to allow it in. It might mean that we might have to change the number of people in the study, you know, to be able to still tell if the drug works, but we would never not allow something that becomes standard, you know, FDA approved and a marketed drug. So we'll have to see, you know, at the end of the year when we have the results of Neurone and when we learn more about the FDA plans for Amylyx. But it's a hopeful time, you know, to be having those you know, those hopes that there might be some, you know, new drugs coming out on the market. So so thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Kuldip, for joining us and for your support of the platform trial and all the great ideas you give us on the different committees you're part of, and Sabrina for helping to run this. We will hopefully see some of you next week. We'll spread the word. We really love the idea from our patient advisory group to have drop-ins every week. So it's something new in trials, and again, another good idea. So we'll hopefully see how it works. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.